Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spoken Greats podcast, where we take great ideas from great books. Today, we're going to be looking at Book 4 from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and we'll be doing a walkthrough, talk-through, going through it line by line and trying to make sense of it. If you're not familiar with Meditations, it's a collection of thoughts which the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself to remind himself on the teachings of Stoicism, a Greco-Roman philosophy. If you'd like to follow along today, I'm reading the Penguin Classics version of Meditations. I'll also provide the link to a free version of Meditations, which you can find on Project Gutenberg. I'll leave that in the description. It will be slightly different language to the version I'm reading, but you'll get the same gist. And you might find that this process is a little bit disjointed, and that's because Marcus never intended for this to be published. So it's a collection of random writings, and you can jump from point to point. And so when you're reading this, you can pick it up and just jump on a random page and study a small passage and then leave it and come back to it at another time. You don't need to read it chronologically, but just for the purpose of analysis, we're going to be going through it systematically. I've already done 3 podcasts on this up to now, and I'm going to continue going through the book. So before we get started, today I am drinking a Müller Riesling from Niederösterreich, or Lower Austria. It's a Qualitätswein. So if you don't know anything about Austrian wine, there's 3 tiers of labeling. So you've got Prädikatswein, Qualitätswein, and Landwein. So Landwein is like the most basic, the most vague. It will just say something like wine of Austria, and that will be your lowest quality wine. And then typically Qualitätswein will be a tier up from that. It will stipulate that all the grapes will have to be picked from the same region, in this case, Lower Austria, which is the east of the country on the border with the Czech Republic. Whilst Austrian wines aren't so easy to read in terms of looking at the labels and deciding on the quality, when you compare it, for example, with French labeling, it's usually much easier because of the AOCs or the appellations. Another sign of quality with Austrian wines is the Austrian flag with the coat of arms imprinted on the top of the bottle. So we're expecting at least a middle of the road wine here. It's not going to be bottom tier, and it's not going to be top tier and rock my socks off either. Rieslings come in many different varieties. The biggest producers of Riesling typically are Mosel in Germany or Alsace in France, but Austria also makes some nice Rieslings. And they can vary from luscious sweet all the way through to dry and crisp. And in the case of this wine, it says Kalk and Steiner on the front, which means chalk and stone. So we're expecting this to be quite dry and probably have a mineral characteristic to reflect the stony terrain that the grapes have been grown on. But let's give it a whiff, shall we? Not much of a strong nose there. There is a hint of mineral to it, a little bit of green apple. But let's give this a go, shall we? Cheers. It's quite mellow. Definitely a hint of green apple. Mineral, peach, ever so slight peach, but it's subtle. And I'm struggling to talk now as my mouth's filling up with saliva, which means that it's incredibly acidic, which would make it ideal for pairing with some spicy food. If you had this with a curry, equally some seafood, a little bit of paella or some salmon perhaps. This would offset some of those stronger flavors you might get in dishes like that, which are typically quite difficult to pair with. And so what I like about Rieslings, when you're struggling to find a wine to pair with dishes like that, Riesling can often bail you out of a difficult situation when you have something like a curry and you're thinking, what the hell can I pair this with? I picked this up from Lidl. I can't remember how much it was. It was like £7 or £8 maybe, from their spring wine tour selection. Please let me know what you're drinking in the comments, and let's get started with Book 4. Wherever it is in agreement with nature, the ruling power within us takes a flexible approach to circumstances, always adapting itself easily to both practicality and the given event. It has no favoured material for its work, but sets out on its objects in a conditional way, turning any obstacle into material for its own use. It is like a fire mastering whatever falls into it. A small flame would be extinguished, but a bright fire rapidly claims as its own all that is heaped on it, devours it all, and leaps up yet higher in consequence. So here Marcus is talking about the strength of our minds to endure anything that life throws at us. And it's not merely something that will trip us up, but something we can use. And he likens it to a fire here. It's almost as if you're putting fuel onto the fire. And by taking on adversity, you're strengthened. No action should be undertaken without aim or other than in conformity with a principle affirming the art of life. So here he's talking about the importance of taking directed action, not being aimless in what you think, say, or do. Always think back to what it is that you're actually trying to achieve. In Alice in Wonderland, Alice encounters the Cheshire Cat and asks him which way should she go. And the cat asks her where does she want to go, and she says she doesn't really care. And then the Cheshire Cat replies, then it doesn't matter which way you go. If you don't know where you're going, and you've not considered the end state, then your action is aimless. How are you supposed to arrive somewhere that you want to arrive at if you're not considering where it is that you're currently going? Doing things randomly produces random results. And if you have a specific end in mind which you want to achieve, you can't do things haphazardly. And this is something that Marcus repeats throughout meditations, that it's important to have this in the back of your mind in everything you do, what it is that you're actually trying to achieve. Men seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, in the hills, and you yourself are particularly prone to this yearning. But all this is quite unphilosophic, when it is open to you at any time you want to retreat into yourself. No retreat offers someone more quiet and relaxation than into his own mind, especially if he can dip into thoughts there which put him at immediate, complete ease. And by ease, I simply mean a well-ordered life. So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. The doctrines you will visit there should be few and fundamental, sufficient at one meeting to wash away all your pain and send you back free of resentment at what you must rejoin. So here Marcus is talking about the tendency in many philosophical movements to retreat to a compound, some kind of hermit cave, detached from society, to escape the crowd and live sort of independent of civilization, because the coming and goings of everyone else is a great distraction and you can't live amongst them. But the Stoics don't believe this. The Stoics believe that you have a moral duty, a civic duty, to participate in society. And it doesn't matter where you are, it is possible to access your mind, which should be unaffected by the external. Ultimately, we do not have full control of our external life. As an experiment, try sitting in silence now, wherever you happen to be, for 5 minutes, and pay attention to all the noises that occur. This could be the creaking of floorboards, water going through the pipes in your house. It could be the sound of traffic outside, conversation. It could be the humming sound of your computer. And notice that we don't have control over any of these noises which are occurring. They just happen. And then they go. All we have control of is our mind. And so the Stoics believed it's possible to have the same calmness of mind regardless of whether you're in a nightclub full of hundreds of people and loud music, or if you're in a cottage in the middle of nowhere, or on a construction site. It makes no difference. Your mind is available to you at all times. It's the only thing available to you at all times. And notice how he's talking about, or how the meditations should be fundamental and limited. So it's not about trying to expose your mind to more ideas, but rather to remind yourself of key fundamentals, which you can always go back to. And this is a theme throughout meditations. You'll see a lot of repetition, and that's because Marcus is trying to remind himself about the importance of having a sense of urgency, because life is so short. The importance of living a good life, being a good man, and accepting that death and adversity are natural parts of the universe, and nothing is inherently bad within them. There's enough to unpack in those few ideas alone to spend an eternity thinking about, never mind trying to add anything else in. And what is it you will resent? Human wickedness? Recall the conclusion that rational creatures are born for each other's sake, that tolerance is a part of justice, that wrongdoing is not deliberate. Consider the number of people who spent their lives in enmity, suspicion, hatred, outright war, and were then laid out for burial or reduced to ashes. Stop then, or will you fret at your allocation from the whole? The key takeaway here is that death is inevitable, and we will all suffer the same fate. Whether you live your life full of hatred and bitterness or happiness, you will die regardless. So you might as well spend it without the hatred. And also he touches on the fact that wrongdoing is not deliberate. People don't generally see themselves as the bad guy. They like to think that they're doing the right thing. Whatever their worldview, they have interpreted a certain action as to be a good action. And the Stoics believed that someone who committed a wrong has been misguided, and you either teach them the correct path and correct their action, or you tolerate it. Those are the only two options. Revisit the alternatives, providence or atoms, and the many indications that the universe is a kind of community. But will matters of the flesh still have their hold on you? Consider that the mind, once it has abstracted itself and come to know its own defining power, has no contact with the movement of the bodily spirit. Be that smooth or troubled, remember that all that you have heard and agreed about pain and pleasure. So Marcus is arguing with himself here that the mind is distinct from the external world. The internal world and the external world are separate, and the internal world cannot be affected by the external. And why would you concern yourselves with the preoccupations of the external world? And he will go on to mention some of these trivialities as we look at here. Then, will a little fame distract you? Look at the speed of universal oblivion, the gulf of immeasurable time both before and after the vacuity of applause, the indiscriminate fickleness of your apparent supporters, a tiny room in which all this is confined. The whole earth is a mere point in space. What a minute cranny within this is your own habitation, and how many and what sort will sing your praises here? Life is incredibly fickle, and with that is fame as well. Think of all the people before us who were incredibly famous, and now you could say their names and someone would just go, who? At one point they were a household name. They were the talk of everyone, and now they've faded into oblivion, and all the people that remembered them have faded into oblivion. Regarding the approval of others or seeking fame is a very fickle goal, and people are fickle as well. Look at what people cheer or what people boo. Is this the kind of approval that you really value? Something which changes so haphazardly? Marcus contends that it's worthless. It doesn't mean anything. Finally, then, remember this retreat into your own little territory within yourself. Above all, no agonies, no tensions. Be your own master, and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a mortal creature. And here 2 of the most immediately useful thoughts you will dip into. First, that things cannot touch the mind. They are external and inert. Anxieties can only come from your internal judgment. Second, that all these things will change almost as you look at them, and then will be no more. Constantly bring to mind all that you yourself have already seen changed. The universe is change. Life is judgment. All of existence is in constant change. There's the expression from Heraclitus that no man bathes in the same river twice, because the river changes and so does the man. And if you think that right down to the atomical level, atoms are moving in a constant state of change, our cells are dying and regenerating, and at the macro level, in our material world, things are moving as well. Change is a natural part of the process. If you think about, even when we are looking at things, we are technically looking in the past. Appears to be instantaneous to us, but there is a fraction of time that has taken for light to enter our eyes, observe the object, and our brain to process what it is that we're seeing. And even if that is as close to an instant, nevertheless, we are looking at things which have already happened. And so the expectation that things would stay the same is rather naive. Death is simply another part of that change process from one state to another, and there's nothing to be feared or anxious about. If mind is common to us all, then we have reason also in common, that which makes us rational beings. If so, then common too is the reason which dictates what we should or should not do. If so, then law too is common to us all. If so, then we are citizens. If so, we share in a constitution. If so, the universe is a kind of community. In what else could one say that the whole human race shares a common constitution? From there then, this common city, we take our very mind, our reason, our law. From where else? Just as the earthy part of me has been derived from some earth, the watery from the next element, the air of my breath from some other source, the hot and fiery from its own origin. For nothing comes from nothing, nor returns to nothing. So the mind also has its source. So the Stoics had this sense of belonging to the wider humanity. They very much believed in the principle of cosmopolitanism, from the Greek words cosmo, which is world, universe, cosmos, and polis, city. So literally a citizen of the world, if you like. And it's in this belief of us all being part of the same group that the Stoics believe that we have a duty to each other as human beings. Death, just like birth, is a mystery of nature, first a combination, then a dissolution of the same elements. Certainly no cause for shame, because nothing out of the order for an intelligent being or contrary to the principle of his constitution. Death is equal to us all. It's something that everyone who has been born has experienced, and it's something that everyone who is currently alive will experience. There's nothing adverse about it. If it was a case that some people died and other people were immortal, then clearly that would be an incredible injustice and naturally much more something to be fearful of or regard as undesirable. But if something happens to everyone, then by its very definition, it is the norm, it is normal. And what is to fear from something that is normal? With such people, such an outcome is both natural and inevitable. If you wish it otherwise, you are hoping that figs will no longer produce their rennet. In any case, remember that in a very brief time, both you and he will be dead, and shortly after, not even your names will be left. So Marcus here is talking about the nature of people. If people are a certain way, you cannot be mad when they act that way. Any more than you can be mad at a dog for barking. Dogs bark, it's what they do. You can spend your life cursing why is it that dogs bark and how bloody annoying it is, or you can come to terms with this fact and accept that it's in dogs' nature. Regardless of which outcome you decide, dogs will continue to bark. And the reference here about what seems to be like he's referring to a rivalry with some kind of enemy, that you and him will both be dead and soon be forgotten. It's almost akin to when you put your hand in a pool of water and you move your hands about, you splash the water, and it creates a great disturbance in the water. And for that brief moment in time, it has a large impact on the water. And then when you take your hands out, the water begins to calm. Some ripples stay behind, which give an indication of what happened before. But then give it 30 seconds or more and the water will return to its original state. And there will be no evidence of what came before. Such is the way in life as well. In the immediate moment, things seem to have much more significance. But on a long enough time frame, they completely fade. Remove the judgment, and you have removed the thought, I am hurt. Remove the thought, I am hurt, and the hurt itself is removed. Things are absolutely what you make of them, and if you decide that something that has happened to you is bad, or you consider it bad, then you're right. If you consider it a good thing, you're right. Whatever it is you choose to believe, that is what you will believe, ultimately. The power of the mind in framing these things is incredibly strong. What does not make a human being worse in himself cannot make his life worse either, and it cannot harm him from outside or inside. So here Marcus is talking about the idea that as long as something cannot affect your mind, then it cannot affect you. And as we've touched on before, the Stoics believe that nothing can alter your mind. The nature of the beneficial was bound to act thus. All's right that happens in the world, examine this saying carefully, and you will find it true. I do not mean right simply in the context of cause and effect, but in the sense of just, as if some adjudicator were assigning dues. So keep on observing this as you have started, and in all that you do combine doing it with being a good man, and in the specific conception of good man. Preserve this in every sphere of action. So the Stoics believed in the acceptance of fate. Whatever life throws at you, it is in your duty to carry on and accept your fate. Marcus Aurelius' fate was to be an emperor, and so it's his duty to be a good emperor. Epictetus was made to be a slave, so it was his duty to be a good slave. In all that you do, you still have the duty to be a good person. When someone does you wrong, do not judge things as he interprets them, or would like you to interpret them. Just see them as they are, in plain truth. Looking at things objectively is a very difficult skill to do, to detach the emotion from something. This is something particularly prevalent in modern society. We can intensify our vocabulary to the point that things seem much worse than they actually are. We use phrases like an attack on democracy. You cannot attack an idea. You can occupy a building, sure, but at some point you'll have to leave. Or the building could even be destroyed, but democracy as a concept will continue to exist. It's not something that you can remove. When a customer is unhappy with a business and they describe their treatment as disgusting, incest is disgusting. Not receiving a delivery on time is inconvenient. The over-intensification of vocabulary lessens the strength of what people say, and it removes that objective element of what has actually happened. And it's easy to whip oneself into a frenzy and get over emotional about circumstances because we have attached this emotional language as opposed to looking at things as they are, not how the optics appear. Always have these two principles in readiness. First, to do only what the reason inherent in kingly and judicial power prescribes for the benefit of mankind. Second, to change your ground if in fact there is someone to correct and guide you away from some notion. But this transference must always spring from a conviction of justice or the common good, and your preferred course must be likewise, not simply for apparent pleasure or popularity. So, these two lessons are quite important for Marcus Aurelius because he's an emperor. He is the absolute ruler of the superpower of Europe at the time. He has total power over the empire, and his word is law. And Marcus tries to remind himself about the importance of being a good ruler. So here he's talking about everything he does must be in the common interest of the people, of mankind. And the second one as well, on changing his mind, it's not the act of weakness to change your mind, it's an act of wisdom. If you've been presented with evidence that one course of action is better than another, then you would be stupid to continue with your original. But he does note here that you shouldn't change your mind just because it's the popular thing to do, or that it might be more beneficial to you. It should only be if the other course of action would be to do more good for humanity. Another thing to note here is that as time goes on, we often change our beliefs on things. We realise that we were wrong about things. It's a powerful thought experiment to do. If you look back and think of what did you used to believe that you no longer believe now? And think, what could you possibly be believing right now that you might be wrong about in the future? It's a powerful thought exercise to do. Do you possess reason? I do. Why not use it then, with reason doing its job? What else do you want? You have subsisted as a part of the whole. You will vanish into that which gave you birth, or rather you will be changed, taking up into the generative principle of the universe. Many grains of incense on the same altar, one falls to ash first, another later. No difference. We all have the same outcome. We will all die. That is a certainty. Everything else is a mere question of chronology. We may die before others, or we may die after them. But there is certainty that we're all going to the same place. We're all on the same train. Some people are in the carriage in front of us, and some are in the carriage before. It makes no difference. Within 10 days, you will be regarded as a god by those very people who now see you as beast or baboon, if you return to your principles and the worship of reason. So Marcus here is saying that if you act according to reason, then people will see that you're ultimately doing good for mankind. But also here he's pointing out the fickleness of the crowd. People who once criticised you or laughed at you can turn into your biggest supporter all of a sudden. And this is because the public approval is incredibly fleeting and fickle. If you look in this internet age where people suddenly arrive at some kind of influence status, and then some controversy will emerge and they'll be cancelled and everyone will turn on them. Think of how fickle that support is. And if something can change so suddenly like that, then was it really all that valuable to begin with? No, you do not have thousands of years to live. Urgency is on you. While you live, while you can, become good. Marcus and the rest of the Stoics have a bias towards action because life is short. We are not immortal, and we can often put things off. We know there are things that we should do, but we make excuses for doing it tomorrow as opposed to now. But we could die tomorrow, and we then would have lived our entire lives without doing anything. This is where the sense of urgency becomes important. The Stoics don't obsess about death because they are afraid of it or seeking it out, but rather to remind themselves that they need to start acting on what it is that they're supposed to achieve. The clock is ticking. What ease of mind you gain from not looking at what your neighbour has said or done or thought, but only at your own actions to make them just, reverential, imbued with good. So do not glance at the black characters either side, but run right on to the line, straight, not straggly. We all have more than enough to work on ourselves without worrying what it is that other people are doing, picking out the flaws in other people or looking at, look, they have this problem or that problem or they've done that thing, does not change our situation. We can chastise others and point fingers and say, oh yeah, look at you, what you've done. But guess what? Whatever it is that's going on in your life, that still needs to be addressed by you. And focusing on the problems of others does not help that. Jordan Peterson's always going on about if you want to change the world, then clean your room. And there's some wisdom in that. There's an almost narcissism in thinking that you can change the whole world whilst you haven't even got a grip on your own life. And so taking that time to look around you at the local level and seeing what's within your immediate range of control, that can be the starting point to everything else. One who is all in a flutter over his subsequent fame fails to imagine that all those who remember him will very soon be dead, and he too. Then the same will be true of all successors, until the whole memory of him will be extinguished in a sequence of lamps lit and snuffed out. But suppose immortality in those who will remember you, and everlasting memory. Even so, what is that to you? And I do not simply mean that this is nothing to the dead, but to the living also. What is the point of praise, other than for some practical aspect of management? As it is, you are losing the opportunity of that gift of nature, which does not depend on another's word. Everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it. Work has its own reward. There's the satisfaction of doing a good job, which will come regardless of whether you receive praise from other people. You know what you did, and that's the part that matters. The work is the reward. Anything else that comes just happens to be an incidental bonus. Everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it. At any rate, praise does not make anything better or worse. This applies even to the popular conception of beauty, as in material things or works or art. So does the truly beautiful need anything beyond itself? No more than law, no more than truth, no more than kindness or integrity. Which of these things derives its beauty from praise, or withers under criticism? Does an emerald lose its quality if it is not praised? And what of gold, ivory, purple, a lyre, a dagger, a flower, a bush? Things of objective value do not change regardless of how much you criticize or praise them. A flower will not change its appearance regardless of whether you say that's a beautiful flower or that's an ugly flower. it will still maintain its value. And so Marcus here is trying to emphasize how vacuous praise is. You get the feeling this would be a difficult guy to work for. If you did your job, he would say, that's what you were supposed to do. Why do you want the reward? And if you didn't do it, he would be disappointed anyway. You may ask how, if souls live on, the air can accommodate them all from the beginning of time. How does the earth accommodate all those bodies buried in it over the same eternity? Just as here on earth, once bodies have kept their residence for whatever time, their change and decomposition makes room for other bodies. So it is with souls migrated to the air. They continue for a time, then change, dissolve, and take fire as they are assumed into the generative principle of the whole. In this way, they make room for successive residence. Such would be one's answer on the assumption that souls do live on. We should consider, though, not only the multitude of bodies thus buried, but also the number of animals eaten every day by us and other creatures, a huge quantity consumed and in a sense buried in the bodies of those who feed on them. And yet there is room for them, because they are reduced to blood and changed into the elements of air and fire. How to investigate the truth of this? By distinguishing the material and the causal. So this is a common practice that Marcus does throughout meditations, is break things down into their components, their atoms and materials which combine together to make different things. And when you break things down to their components, they seem less of a big deal. Someone hasn't insulted you, it's just a mere ordering of words which have been formed through a vibration which has hit your eardrum. You can go as granular as you want in the detail, and the more detailed you go, the less severe it sounds. If someone tells you to fuck off, you can break that down into its components to the point where it just seems completely trivial. And then I fail to see how, when you make something look so trivial, how you can still be offended by it. No wandering, in every impulse, give what is right, in every thought, stick to what is certain. So again, Marcus is talking about sticking to the wider aims of what it is you're supposed to be doing, your duty, your life's work. He's trying to remind himself not to be aimless or drift away to thoughtless action. Universe, your harmony is my harmony. Nothing in your good time is too early or too late for me. Nature, all that your seasons bring is fruit to me. All comes from you, exists in you, returns to you. The poet says, "Dear city of Cecrops, will you not say, dear city of Zeus?" So here Marcus is talking about how everything that happens in the world happens as it ought to. We do not die too early or too late. We die exactly when we were supposed to. And what he's talking about here with Dear City of Cecrops, Cecrops was the first king of Athens. And Marcus is contrasting this with Dear City of Zeus, or Zeus being the king of the gods. So he's saying here that the world is his city. He's a citizen of the world. He's not just a part of one country. He's a part of everything in existence. If you want to be happy, says Democritus, do little. May it not be better to do what is necessary, what the reason of a naturally social being demands, and the way reason demands it done? This brings the happiness of both right action and of little action. Most of what we say and do is unnecessary. Remove the superfluous, and you will have more time and less bother. And so in every case, one should prompt oneself, is this, or is it not, something necessary? And the removal of the unnecessary should apply not only to actions, but to thoughts also. Then no redundant actions either will follow. I think in this modern internet culture, there's always a sense of trying to add more stuff, do more things, and actually our appreciation becomes saturated, and we're have a sense of being overwhelmed and we don't manage to do the things that we want to do. The stuff we acquire does not fill us with happiness. And so being more deliberate with your actions and your words can provide much more satisfaction. I've just finished reading Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, and he lays out 3 principles in his book, which is do less, work at a natural pace, and obsess over quality. So ironically, by doing less things, you become more focused. There's a terrible perception that busyness is the same as productivity. You can be frantically busy doing one thing to the next, but it doesn't mean you're being effective. It just means that your calendar is full. By reducing your bandwidth and focusing on what actually matters to you, it enables you to go to a deeper level of quality and work at a pace that is sustainable on things. We cannot cut out everything that is superfluous, and there is a certain value in doing things which are superfluous, which in the moment may not seem productive, but in the long term are. For example, going for a walk, or reading a book, or having a coffee. If you were to do these things in the office, you may get chastised by a manager because it seems like you're doing nothing. But these are often moments where serendipity can develop. You may create a new idea or a new concept, which could be the next big thing in your sector. And it's only through those moments of unproductive time that these things can be produced. The superfluity here in Slow Productivity that Cal Newport touches on is endless meetings and email chains and looking at your phone. These things which are in the category of superfluous and we don't enjoy them. It's fine to do things just because we enjoy them, but often we are hijacked by urgent tasks which we hate doing, we don't enjoy, and impeding us from increasing the quality in our work. Try out too how the life of the good man goes for you, the man content with his dispensation from the whole, and satisfied in his own just action and kind disposition. You have seen that. Now look at this. Do not trouble yourself. Keep yourself simple. Someone does wrong, he does wrong to himself. Has something happened to you? Fine. All that happens has been fated by the whole from the beginning, and spun for your own destiny. In sum, life is short. Make your gain from the present moment with right reason and justice. Keep sober and relaxed. I feel like this passage is very much go with the flow, and maybe I'm being a bit too simplistic here. But ultimately, this treadmill is going to keep on going, regardless of whether you're happy or unhappy with it. It doesn't stop, and so you have to make the most of it. Either an ordered universe or a stew of mixed ingredients, yet still coherent order. Otherwise, how could a sort of private order subsist within you, if there is disorder within the whole? Especially given that all things, distinct as they are, never permeate and respond to each other. So here Marcus is contending that there has to be some kind of order to existence, because of the very nature of the order of our minds. And if there is an order to a universe, then that dictates that everything is happening according to the laws of that universe. Therefore, it's compliant with the laws. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. A black character, an effeminate, unbending character, the character of a brute or dumb animal, infantile, stupid, fraudulent, coarse, mercenary, despotic. So this is probably proof that Marcus never intended this book to be published and that he was writing it to himself. It's not known who or what he's referring to here, or what he's describing. He may have been thinking about someone or thinking of characteristics which are undesirable in a good person. Nobody knows. So we'll move on from that. If one who does not recognize the contents of the universe is a stranger in it, no less a stranger is the one who fails to recognize what happens in it. He is a fugitive if he runs away from social principle, blind if he shuts the eye of the mind, a beggar if he depends on others and does not possess within him all he needs for life, a tumor on the universe if he stands aside and separates himself from the principle of our common nature in disaffection with its lot. For it is nature which brings this about, just as it has brought you about too. A social splinter if he splits his own soul away from the soul of all rational beings, which is a unity. So here Marcus is talking about the fact that we are a part of this world. We often think of ourselves as separate or somehow special or unique. But as we accept that everything else in the universe is subject to change, we are no exception to that. We follow this law as well. Hence, things will happen to us, things will change in our lives, and that is all part of the process. One philosopher has no shirt, one has no book. Here is another half naked. I have no bread, he says, but I am faithful to reason. But I, for my part, have all the food of learning, and yet I am not faithful. So here Marcus is talking about the Cynics, which is a school of philosophers who often lived extremely simplistic lives. I believe Diogenes lived in a barrel or something like that. And Marcus is pointing out that even when they had nothing, they still found it possible to live according to reason. And yet he's pointing out here that he has access to all of these things, all the books, all the knowledge that he could possibly need on the subject. Yet he still struggles to adhere to this principle. More information is not what we need. We have access to more information in this day and age than at any other point in human history. What we need is more action in accordance with our values. Consuming more information will not change this, as demonstrated by the example of the Cynics being able to adhere to their principles with very little. Love the art which you have learnt and take comfort in it. Go through the remainder of your life in sincere commitment of all your being to the gods, and never making yourself tyrant or slave to any man. Consider, for example, the time of Vespasian. You will see everything the same. People marrying, having children, falling ill, dying, fighting, feasting, trading, farming, flattering, pushing, suspecting, plotting, praying for the death of others, grumbling at their lot, falling in love, storing up wealth, longing for consulships and kingships. And now that life of theirs is gone and vanished. Pass on again to the time of Trajan. Again, everything the same, that life too is dead. Similarly, look at the histories of other eras and indeed whole nations and see how many lives of striving met with a quick fall and resolution into the elements. Above all, review in your mind those you have seen yourself in empty struggles, refusing to act in accord with their own natural constitution, to hold tight to it and find it sufficient. And in this context, you must remember that there is proportionate value in our attention to each action. So you will not lose heart if you devote no more time than they warrant to matters of less importance. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And whilst the universe is in a constant flux of change, things often look very similar. History does not tend to repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes, and you can find parallels in different historical examples. It's always the same, isn't it? There's war, there's politics, there's art, culture, law, people competing for influence, for popularity, for wealth, for love, people struggling to feed their families, disease, revolution, reform. all these things are common to the existence of humanity, and what was once the big thing which rocked society at the time is merely a footnote in history for a future generation. Think about all the noise now that is made in the media about the COVID-19 pandemic and how much attention that took on everybody across the cultural zeitgeist. Everyone talking about it, making memes, obsessing over it in every aspect of their life. For 2 years, it's all everyone talked about. Now, consider how much people talk about the Antonine Plague at the time of Marcus Aurelius, which killed 1 in 3 people who lived in Europe. Fucking nobody, right? Because it fades, the significance fades with time. COVID-19 killed a tiny fraction of the population, but at the time was the most important issue in the eyes of everyone. And there will be a time where people will look at the pandemic in the same way that they look at the Antonine Plague. They will forget that it happened in the same way that more recently, people don't think about the Spanish flu every day, even though it killed more people than the First World War. It does not have the same significance that more recent events do. Human beings obviously have a recency bias, and the more recent to living memory that an event is, the greater in importance that it holds. This is also why there's a much more emotive reaction when talking about genocides of the 20th century versus talking about genocides of the 13th century. Naturally, the closer it is to present day, the more importance it has. But everything fades with time. Words in common use long ago are obsolete now. So too the names of those once famed are in a sense obsolete. Camillus, Caeso, Volasus, Dentatus, a little later Scipio and Cato, then Augustus too, then Hadrian and Antoninus. All things fade and quickly turn to myth. Quickly too utter oblivion drowns them. And I am talking of those who shone with some wonderful brilliance. The rest, once they have breathed their last, are immediately beyond sight, beyond knowledge. But what in any case is everlasting memory? Utter emptiness. So some of the names mentioned here. So Camillus, he saved Rome from an invasion from the Gauls in about like 390. And then, funnily enough, I was looking up these Caeso, Volasus, and Dentatus. Nobody even really knows who Marcus is talking about here, which kind of proves the point even more that he might have been famous in his time, and now no one has a clue who they are. And then Scipio refers to the general who defeated Hannibal. And Cato is another person alive at the time of Scipio. And then you have the emperors Augustus, Hadrian, and Antoninus. But I do find it funny that Marcus himself has mentioned 3 figures who no one today is even aware of, which proves his point even more. And these are just the people who were noteworthy in history. Peasant number 2,423,682 was forgotten about as soon as he died. So what chance do the rest of us have? If even the most famous people in history are very quickly forgotten or reduced to a vague footnote in a history book, which soon will diminish itself. The preoccupation with trying to become immortal in the memory of others is a futile attempt. So where should a man direct his endeavour? Here only, a right mind, action for the common good, speech incapable of lies, a disposition to welcome all that happens as necessary, intelligible, flowing from an equally intelligible spring of origin. So you can't control what happens after you die, so all you can do is make sure you're a good person in the time that you are here. You will have no control over your reputation after you are gone. It's not worth thinking about the after effects and instead concentrate on doing good now. Gladly surrender yourself to Clotho. Let her spin your thread into whatever web she wills. So Clotho was one of the Fates, which is one of the Greek goddesses, which determined fate. I believe it's the origin of the word cloth. And so Clotho would how you'd spin a yarn or whatever to get a thread for making clothes. This is where we get the expression for our fates are interwoven. The Greeks and the Romans believed that our fate was predetermined. All is ephemeral, both memory and the object of memory. Constantly observe all that comes about through change and habituate yourself to the thought that the nature of the whole loves nothing so much as to change one form of existence into another, similar but new. All that exists is in a sense the seed of its successor, but your concept of seed is simply what is put into the earth or the womb. That is very unphilosophic thinking. I'm not going to get drawn into the free will debate, but the proponents that there is no free will would explain this, that all events ultimately have a cause and can be traced back to a prior cause. And so that whatever thought occurs in your mind now only could have been that thought. And anything you say now only could have been that phrase. Anything you do could only have been that action because of all the previous things that had happened to lead to that moment where you are now. It would not have been possible to do anything differently. I suppose this is in the same vein with the Stoics, that things are written into fate. Your death will soon be on you, and you are not yet clear-minded or untroubled, or free from the fear of external harm, or kindly to all people, or convinced that justice of action is the only wisdom. Marcus here is reminding himself that he falls short of his own standards. It's worth remembering that Marcus Aurelius is just another person like you or me who, through fate of circumstances, happened to be, by accident of birth, born into an aristocracy which made him emperor. He didn't have control over that. And when you quote from meditations and other things, and people talk about Marcus Aurelius, it's easy to make him out into a saint who had this amazing self-control. But he's also self-aware that he falls short himself. Nobody is perfect. We all are ultimately flawed, and we often fail to meet our own standards that we aspire to. Marcus Aurelius is no exception to this. Look into their directing minds, observe what even the wise will avoid or pursue. So even the wise are subject to fear and pleasures. We are no different in that we'll all be subject to trivial concerns at some point, or be tempted by impulses, or be overly anxious about something we need not be. It is a fate that we share. Harm to you cannot subsist in another's directing mind, nor indeed in any turn or change of circumstance. Where then? In that part of you which judges harm. So no such judgment, and all is well. Even if what is closest to it, your own body, is subject to knife or cautery, or left to suppurate or mortify, even so that faculty in you which judges these things should stay untroubled, should assess nothing either bad or good, which can happen equally to the bad man or the good, because what happened to a man irrespective of his life's conformity to nature is not of itself either in accordance with nature or contrary to it. That scene in Tropic Thunder when Ben Stiller's character, was it Tug Speedman? He gets taken into the drug cartel's camp and he thinks he's still in character, so he's, my body may be shackled, but my spirit runs free. And as cheesy as it is, there is some wisdom in that your mind cannot be imprisoned. No one can do anything to your mind. They can do what they want to your body. Someone could kill you if necessary, but they cannot do anything to your mind. That is the one thing which you always have in your control. Think always of the universe as one living creature, comprising one substance and one soul. How all is absorbed into this one consciousness, how a single impulse governs all its actions, how all things collaborate in all that happens, the very web and mesh of it all. This is the principle how all things are connected, and it's this idea of cause and effect, as I touched on before, about how all of the preceding events that have happened have caused the current moment that is now. In a sense, it is predetermined to happen. You are a soul carrying a corpse, as Epictetus used to say. This is that detachment, that the idea of detachment of your mind away from your body. In a sense, the body is a vessel for our mind, or soul, as Marcus refers to it here. Change. Nothing inherently bad in the process, nothing inherently good in the result. Change is the inevitable. It's the constant thing that always happens. We should not seek to fight it just for the sake of the fact that we want things to stay the same, nor should we be overly enthusiastic about change to the point that all change is necessarily good. We should view things on their merits. Sometimes there are changes that are positive, other times less. But there's nothing to be feared or cheered from change just in of itself. There is a river of creation, and time is a violent stream. As soon as one thing comes into sight, it is swept past, and another is carried down. It too will be taken on its way. As I was talking about how time covers things and makes things disappear into oblivion, there's a similar metaphor being used here by Marcus in that things will be swept away and forgotten about. All that happens is as habitual and familiar as roses in spring and fruit in the summer. True too of disease, death, defamation, and conspiracy, and all that delights or gives pain to fools. So all the things that trouble our lives are as normal as sunrise or sunset. They are built into the very nature of the universe. Should we be happy or sad at sunrise or sunset, or should we just accept that this is the way that things are? What comes after is always an affinity to what went before. Not some simple enumeration of disparate things or under merely necessary sequence, but a rational connection. And just as existing things are harmoniously interconnected, so the processes of becoming exhibit no mere succession, but a wonderfully inherent affinity. This is more repetition of that idea of cause and effect, in that one event leads to another. And so the things that are happening now are the just cause, are the direct consequence of what happened before. As Newton said, each and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Events should not surprise us if we look at what happened before them. Always remember Heraclitus. The death of earth is the birth of water. The death of water is the birth of air. The death of earth is fire and back again. Remember too his image of the man who forgets his way home, his saying that men are at odds with their most constant companion, the reason which governs all things, that their everyday experience takes them by surprise, that we must not act or speak as if asleep, and sleep brings the illusion of speech and action, and that we should not be like children with their parents, simply accepting what we are told. So Marcus here quoting from Heraclitus, our tendency to forget our reasoning. It's so easy to be ambushed by our impulses and respond to stimuli instead of using our reason to look at things objectively and reason how they actually are. Just as if a god told you that you would die tomorrow, or at least the day after tomorrow, you would attach no importance to the difference of one day unless you are a complete coward, such as the tiny gap of time. So you should think there is no great difference between life to the umpteenth year and life to tomorrow. The outcome is the same, isn't it? You are going to die. We're all going to die. And the only difference between us is when that will happen. We have no difference in outcome. The only difference is in mere logistics, how, when, and where it happens. And this is the thing that bothers us, is logistics. Think constantly how many doctors have died after knitting their brows over their own patients, how many astrologers after predicting the death of others as if death was something important, How many philosophers, after endless deliberation on death or immortality, how many heroes, after the many others they killed, how many tyrants, after using their power over men's lives with monstrous insolence, as if they themselves were immortal. Think too how many whole cities have died. Helice, Pompeii, Herculaneum, innumerable others. Go over now all those you have known yourself, one after the other. One man follows a friend's funeral and is then laid out himself. Then another follows him, and all in a brief space of time. The conclusion of this, you should always look on human life as short and cheap. Yesterday sperm, tomorrow a mummy or ashes. So one should pass through this tiny fragment of time in tune with nature, and leave it gladly, as an olive might fall when ripe, blessing the earth which bore it, and grateful to the tree which gave it growth. So here Marcus is talking about so many different figures in history who may have fought over the lives of others, and they shared the same fate, didn't they? They all died and disappeared into oblivion, even whole cities. So he gives the example of Helice here, which is a city in ancient Greece, which sunk into the ground. And Pompeii, Herculaneum, you might have heard of. They were destroyed by the volcanic eruption at Vesuvius in 79 AD. By the way, thoroughly recommend visiting them. Herculaneum, I would much more recommend over Pompeii if you have less time to visit. It's a much more concise version. It's much more compact, but you can go inside more of the buildings and it's easier to cover. And if you're more interested in the Roman artifacts that they found, thoroughly recommend the Archaeological Museum in Naples, which is where actually most of the stuff they found in Pompeii, like the frescoes and statues, that's where they're all kept. Because the King of Naples took everything they found from the ruins and put them in his own private collection. But yeah, if you get the chance to visit, highly recommend it. But all these places, they would have been the homes of people. People will have lived their entire lives there and died there, and think that in an instant, a volcanic eruption destroyed all of that. And in an instant, the lives of all these people were destroyed. Such is the existence of all of us. It's a mere question of optics of how and when it will happen. We shouldn't damn our fate for the fact that we have to die, but grateful that we had the chance to live and play our part in this theatre. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. It is my bad luck that this has happened to me. No, you should rather say, it is my good luck that although this has happened to me, I can bear it without pain, neither crushed by the present, nor fearful of the future. Because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So why see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it? Or in general, would you call anything a misfortune for a man which is not a deviation from man's nature? Or anything a deviation from man's nature which is not contrary to the purpose of his nature? Then you have learnt what that purpose is. Can there be anything, then, in this happening which prevents you being just, high-minded, self-controlled, intelligent, judicious, truthful, honourable and free, or any other of these attributes whose combination is the fulfilment of man's proper nature? So in all future events which might induce sadness, remember to call on this principle. This is no misfortune, but to bear it true to yourself is good fortune. A very powerful quote here. There's the sense that nothing really bad can happen to you if you don't judge that it is a bad thing. And you can look at something as a blessing or a curse. There's often the expression of type 1 fun, things which are fun at the time, and type 2 fun, things which are not fun right now, but will be a funny story later on. It just depends on your perspective on things. When a loved one dies, you can look at the sadness of the fact that they have died, or you can focus on the positive, that you were blessed to know this person for the time that you did. and that they were a part of your life. Whichever road you decide to take, that will determine your thoughts and feelings on something. This idea too that we do not have the capacity to endure pain, that it is unbearable. Every second that passes, by definition, you have bore the pain. Pain is something which has occurred to you in the past. What our fear is of future pain. But every second that passed, that's another second that you have tolerated something. So when you say, I cannot bear this, but you are bearing it. You're bearing it right now. Nothing is outside of your capacity to bear. An unphilosophic but nonetheless effective help to putting death in its place is to run over the list of those who have clung long to life. What did they gain over the untimely dead? At any rate, they are all in their graves by now. Sidicianus, Fabius, Julianus, Lepidus, and all others like them who took part in many funerals and then their own. In truth, the distance we have to travel is small, and we drag it out with such labour, in such poor company, in such a feeble body. No great thing then. Look behind you at the huge gulf of time, and another infinity ahead. In this perspective, what is the difference between an infant of 3 days and a Nestor of 3 generations? The universe has been around for, at the best estimate, 14 billion years? I don't even know. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. We can agree to say billions of years. It's accepted that the sun will continue to burn for several billion more years, and humans have existed for maybe 100,000 years. A little bit longer if you include some kind of hybrid common ancestor. Fine, that's such a blink in the eye of existence. It's barely worth mention, yet we hold such attention to this brief span of 70 years if we're lucky, much less at times, and we hold on to life as if every second is that much more valuable. But it's nothing to worry about. Always run on the short road, and nature's road is short. Go then for the healthiest in all you say and do. Such a purpose releases a man from the labours of service, from all need to manage or impress. So if you look for doing the right thing in what you say and do, it simplifies your life, and it is the most direct route to take. Every time you try to do something bad, you're taking a more indirect route to things, and it is playing life on hard mode. It might seem more expedient in the moment, but actually it will take longer to get to what the Stoics would call the good life, which is living in accordance with your nature. So that's book 4 done today. Thank you for listening to the Spoken Greats podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and hit the subscribe button. Please be sure to check out my blog at spokengreats.com and look forward to future episodes where we'll take great ideas from great books. See you soon.